Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday edition of Age of Quarantine. I am your host, Mr. Artie Shepard, and we are going to be interviewing a very, very, very interesting and awesome guy, one of the nicest people I've met. His name is Rob Nicholson, aka Blasko. Here we go. And we're just waiting for a connection, waiting for, there it is, it's connecting. Oh yeah, there he is.
Let me fix this. Cool. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're freezing up a
Great.
little bit.
That sucks. I got my earbuds in, so hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly.
Cool.
Hang on.
All right, there we go. How you doing, buddy? Good. Hopefully the video maintains.
Yeah, it always kind of like it's a total mess. So you were good. You were quick. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
Full bars. How's it now? Police. Can you hear me?
Yep. It's the fuzz. I can, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, we can do this. It'll be good. It'll be fine. How you doing, bud? How's quarantine treating you?
Good. Here we are, living it, weathering the storm, as they say.
You're in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, LA. So it's a hot one today.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting through it. I mean, it's kind of boring out here because you can't do anything or go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I guess it's all for the right reasons. I don't know. Let's hope so.
Nobody knows anything. It's funny because like one of the I wanted to ask you about to start off is that like so for people who I'll just give a little background on you. Blasko is bass player. Started out very young, Cryptic Slaughter. Played a bunch of bands in the 90s. Then went on to play with Danzig for a short time. Then Rob Zombie for a long time. Now plays for Ozzy. But also you are in music management, which is what I want to talk to you a little bit about, just like starting off, because this is such a weird time. And I mean, I know like you manage Zakk, right? Zakk Wylde, and
Yep.
you still do Black Veil Brides. I don't even know if they're still a band. Are they? Like,
Yep. They're in the studio now, making a record. Actually, everyone's making a record. Like Zakk made a record. Black Veil's making a record. Clutch is thinking about doing some stuff. So, but they're like everyone's releasing stuff. They're in the process of doing music on some level. So like Zakk is dropping a box set at the end of the year. Clutch is dropping a box set at the end of the year. Plus, they've got like this sort of compilation record of like oddities and rarities, if you will. That's dropping soon. So everyone's got stuff in progress or coming out, or it's like everyone's like it hasn't really halted anybody all that drastically, like in my purview.
well, I mean, it's so you didn't have too many canceled tours besides obviously Ozzy's, but
Well, I've had a lot of canceled tours. I mean, that definitely derailed things quite considerably. And also too, I think to consider what next year will look like, right? Because we've either had stuff canceled or postponed, but the postponements are maybe sort of inappropriate, right? Because they may just end up just being canceled and reframed anyway. So, you know, I think that as from a management perspective, the responsible way to consider next year is that there will be no touring, right? At least not in the way that we know it. And so I'm sort of trying to take a responsible view of 2021 as like how as musicians that make art for a living, but you can't bring it to the people in a traditional sense. How then do you still create art if that is something that you want to do? And then how do we collectively figure out a way to deliver it to the people in a non-traditional way? So these are the conversations that are happening currently in my job, you know, presently, right?
All very simple answers to those. Yeah, we're at a point at Vitus where we're now like just straight up done postponing things. So it's like we just kind of have to bite it and go for it, because it's not really fair to the public because essentially if you're saying that a show or tour is going to happen in June of next year, at this point I really don't see it. And you know, it's like it's interesting because like what's your view on live streaming? Because I'm definitely torn about the whole thing. I know Clutch did a live stream, right? Like, do you feel like it is the future, or it's just a Band-Aid, or it's?
I think that initially it was looked at as a Band-Aid. Although I did always think of it as the future, and I'll tell you why, I'll get to it. I did think of it as the future because it became something very quickly that the fans adopted as something acceptable, right? Because they were going to be the ones that were going to make the decision if live streaming or virtual shows was cool. Because Clutch or whoever is doing them or was doing them, the fans were going to be the ones that were going to make up that decision. So they were either going to buy a ticket and have a good time or not. And then we could either embrace that or we could scrap it. So I feel like that the fans have embraced it. And even though we delivered it to them as a Band-Aid, I believe that they've adopted it not in the same frame of mind. I believe that they've adopted it as like, this is a fun thing to do because I have no real other option. And I still want to support the bands that I love. And as long as the bands are delivering valuable content and of what I'm paying for, then it's good. And I think that we've hit that crossroads. I think that where it becomes potentially futuristic is that now that we know that fans are into this, I think that when you look at a tour, there's so many places that a tour can't hit, that maybe where there's fans, but maybe they just have no access for whatever reason. So I look at it as like, potentially what you could do is bands could now, whenever we go back to touring as we once knew it, hypothetically, that bands can now use the live stream as an ability to subsidize touring costs on the front end, whereas they can live stream the first show from a tour. So that way they can sort of advertise what the tour is going to look like and all of that, as well as be able to have fans that maybe don't have the opportunity to buy a ticket or go to a show or whatever because it's not in their market. So now these bands have the opportunity to meet their audiences worldwide. You know, for instance, like let's say there's a US tour that isn't going to the UK right away, and to where now UK people can buy a ticket to see the show, you know, and then it supplements the costs and the expenses of touring at the onset. So I feel like it could be a good social experiment to see if that's something that's realistic, but I feel like it is the future hypothetically in that framework.
Yeah, I mean, I love the international aspect of it. I think that that's one of the coolest parts, and that's really the only way that any of the bands that are doing it can really make any money, because if you're not worldwide, you're not really going to get there. And and we had a live stream of the band Thursday, and it was great. It was super cool, and they did the full merch bundles and all that stuff, which I think is really, really great. It's like it I didn't get to see the stats from around the world, but my understanding is that it did really, really well. And you're totally right. I never really thought about like the idea of using your first show live stream as an advertisement internationally for what's going to come. Of course, because I'm a negative Nelly, I immediately was like, well, all the bands that, during the pandemic, they're only going to get one shot. It's like, and everybody wants to have this like really slick production and do all this crazy shit because, like this is their one shot to actually do this because, how many times are people going to buy a live stream moving forward unless you do a full broadcast value TV show? You know what I mean? Like have fucking variety show, have other bands on, have, just make it a whole, a show with,
Yeah.
When Thursday did, I thought it was really cool. They did like on stage, they did on the floor, they did an acoustic set by the bar. It was like really interesting. And, I saw the Biffy Clyro one, the Scottish band, and that we had on last week. And like, it was like massive production. And granted, they have the money, but like, it was like, they just blew their whole load on this thing, and it was great. It was super cool. But it's I don't feel like it's a viable income stream for bands, musicians, booking agents. It's just not. If you want to do that kind of production, it's going to cost you a shit ton of money, and to make up for that is going to be really difficult. It's interesting. I can't see live music coming back the way that it was. I feel like, and I don't mean just like standing there watching a show. I mean like the back end, booking agents, management, the way that everybody kind of operates is going to be so scaled down, at least on a lower level. It's like, it's really interesting. I mean, I have no idea how it's going to turn out looking, but it just feels like something drastic is going to come of this. I mean, it already is. Jesus Christ. I mean, how many venues are closing? Like I feel really lucky that St. Vitus is still, viable at this point. And, as far as I can see, we will continue to be. But, it's, I mean, fuck. I living out in Los Angeles, I can't imagine like the Troubadour is going to go. Like, holy shit, that's crazy. I mean, what are your feelings about that? I mean, you've been touring pretty much your whole life. It's,
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to, I mean, we're in tough times. I mean, that's the reality. Like, I'm not trying to paint some doom and gloom picture because I actually kind of look at it as positive as I can just to get us all through it. Right. But I mean, but we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we don't know how and when shows are going to come back. We don't know how many venues are going to survive. We don't know how many bands are going to survive. And also too, to echo your point, we don't know when it comes back. We don't even know what it's going to look like, and we don't know how. Like St. Vitus can probably afford to have a reduced capacity show, but is that even an acceptable option, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, if you have a venue, and can you jam 20% of the people in there that are unmasked and whatnot? Like, is that, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know. No one knows anything about it. And I think for everybody, that's the frustrating part. Like, for instance, if you said shows are going to come back to normal January 2022, and we know that as a fact, then okay, that sucks, but we'll figure it out until then, right? But we don't know. Then that's the frustrating part, is we don't know in any capacity how this is going to work. And that's the frustrating thing. I mean, there's just, there's no answer for it, right? I mean, so in the meantime, we're going to stay positive. We're going to figure it out. I also to go back to your earlier point of that, these big production live streams, it comes down to, I think, what the point of it is and what the agenda of it is, right? I think that someone like Aaron Lewis, who's doing these live streams on a weekly basis from his couch, is probably cashing in, right? But that's his agenda, and that's his fan base, and to provide some sort of intimate thing I think that's productive because that's what the goal is, to make an intimate experience to where it can kind of be a free form thing, and it's on a reoccurring basis. Whereas a blown out one that's in an arena with pyro and all that stuff, I mean, there's no way, right? There's no way that the agenda is to make money. The agenda is marketing, right? Like, I've got an album coming out or whatever, right? I think if you think of one that works on the grand scale, but was the Nick Cave one, where it was like at Alexandra Palace in the UK, and it was just him and a piano. However, it was a super high production in terms of the way that it was shot and the way that it was edited, right? But in terms of, there was no band to pay, right? There was only one venue, but the production level was high. However, he sold 35,000 tickets at $20 a piece. I'm pretty sure he made some money on that, you know?
Merch. Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I mean,
so
that's a great example of you know, how, like, you can get that. But again, like, you know, Nick Cave is the type of artist where he could probably get away with doing that numerous times during this, and people will still go because he's got such a deep catalog and whatnot. Like, I saw some of the Corey Taylor one, or I don't even know if it's been shown yet, but I saw the advertisement.
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago. It aired already.
Holy shit, the Forum? I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, it's nuts. Like, I mean, I can't imagine how much that cost in production. And, you know, I know he's got a new album out, so he's trying to sell that. I just watched the trailer for the Pussifier one, which was like, Pussifer, whatever it's called, the Maynard one. And the trailer for that looked like the fucking intro to Gladiator. I mean, it's fucking insane.
Right. You know, and that's it.
It was like
I mean,
totally intense, like, high fucking tech, big production.
Right, because, and you got to figure too, like, once again, what the agenda is, because you got to figure that the fan is the fan, but the platform is the TV in the living room, not leaving my house to go to a club and drink a bunch of beer and, you know, fly my t-shirt over my head, right? Like that isn't, even though it's the same fan, it's not the same platform anymore. So you're creating content for the TV and for the living room. So, you know, I see all sides of it, and there's no rules. I think the one thing exciting about the new music business is there's no rules. And so now we've added this context to it as well, to where now you have to be creative, and you have to understand your purpose and your agenda, and it's different for everybody. So I think it's the way that I'm looking at this time is excitement, and exciting that we can create a new narrative and that we can build a new business from it. And the angle that I'm trying to pull away from it is how we do not look at this as a Band-Aid, and how we can utilize this moving forward into however we come out of this, one way or the other. And so that's kind of my position of where I'm at it, because if I don't look at it positively, I'm just going to jump off the tallest building I can find.
Well, you're generally my relationship with you, as far as you're a very positive guy, and so I do love that about you. I like being around positive people because I'm such a negative person. But it's really interesting. You one thing you did talk a little bit about, which I want to apologize to all my friends who are crew guys now, but like the cost of doing one like big production stream is way fucking less than having a touring machine on tour that costs like, you know, $1 million a week or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely like a less expensive way of doing it, you know, but obviously it's not the same experience in any way, shape or form, and can never ever replace live music. And you know, I hope to my crew friends that they get back into something. Did you see the campaign that they launched in England where they're saying you can start over? And they're like, oh yeah, Boris Johnson. They're pushing this agenda that like musicians and like artists and like dancers and stuff, you know, it's the ad is like a ballet dancer, and it says she's going to be in cyber soon, but she doesn't know it yet, and she's like putting on her ballet shoes, and it's like, really, dude, fuck you, like seriously, you can relearn how to do everything in your life right now. You know, I'm 47. No, I can't. Sorry. Like,
Yeah, probably that's probably not the message that's going to resonate with a lot of people.
no, it's fucking crazy. And when you think about, like, you know, I don't think anybody has ever really thought about how deep the venue and crew industry goes, like how much money is being made and how many hours are being worked and how many people do that stuff to make things come off. I mean, you know about this. You fucking tour with Ozzy. Like, there's an army of guys that make that show fucking fantastic, where you guys don't have to think about shit when you get on stage. There's so many people that I'm very dear friends with that did that for a living for years. And, you know, it fucking pains me to see what they're going through right now. And it's, you know, I don't know. Again, this is another thing that there's no answer for. You know?
I mean, look, I mean, on that topic, one thing that I will pull away from the Clutch live streams, and I hope people watching will spread the word and adopt this policy into their live streams. But Clutch, as being one of the coolest bands ever, they take a piece of their live streams from the t-shirt sales and they give it to their crew. Like, so, because, you know, they have a crew that the same crew they've been using for years and years, and they rely on those guys. And so a portion of the proceeds the band sends to the crew. Yeah, and they're transparent about that.
That's Take It Back Sunday was doing that too. They were making specific merch just for their crew, and Adam the singer was doing. He does like personal messages for people, and all that money just goes to their crew, which is really fucking sweet, man. Because, like, I mean, he's not that type of guy who, like, is gonna. I forget that. What is that fucking website where you do, like, you pay $50 and, like, Danny DeVito says what's up to you or something?
Oh yeah, Cameo.
Cameo, that's it.
Yep.
Like, you got like Tom Arnold being like, "What's up, man?" You know, it's he's not that type of person. So it was a really great idea to have these sort of personal relationships or special things for the fans, but also make quite a bit of money for their crew. You know, I don't know how long that lasts, but, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I'd like to say, like, I've actually been looking forward to talking to you about this because I knew you were going to have a positive spin on it, and that was going to make me feel a little bit better about everything. But yeah, so let's switch gears a little bit. It's kind of weird because I had Blasko on my and Ron Grimaldi's podcast a couple of years ago, and we had a 3-hour conversation, I think.
Yeah, we just rolled into the bar and hung out forever. It was a 2-parter, wasn't it?
It was a 2. I had to make it a 2-parter because it was so fucking long. But I mean, we probably did like an hour and 45 minutes on Cryptic Slaughter. And so I don't want to harp on that too much, but I do want to talk about it because obviously it's where you started. And I thought it was such a great story. And my favorite quote from you during that whole thing was, I was like, "So why did Cryptic Slaughter end?" You're like, "Because high school ended." So you joined Cryptic Slaughter when you were in 10th grade. Is that right?
Yeah, 10th grade. And we were all, I mean, Les was a little bit older. So he was already at SMC, which is Santa Monica College, because we were all in the Santa Monica, Venice area. So the three of them lived in Santa Monica, and I lived in Venice, which is only like literally like 5 minutes across the city border. Like I could literally walk from Venice High up one street to Scott's house to rehearse in like 10, 15 minutes. Sorry, what was the question?
Just getting a little bit of history. I mean, it's like, you know, you guys, you played on Convicted, the first record, right?
Oh yeah, so 10th grade, yes. So my point is we were all in high school. Les was a little bit older. He was already at SMC. But the rest of us were all in high school at 10th grade. And that's why, right? Because even though Les was a little bit older, the rest of us all graduated in 1988. And so that was really the end of it, because at that point, when you graduate high school, you make life choices, right? And only stupid me had the life choice decision to chase rock and roll to the ends of the earth. You know, everybody else wanted to do other things because Cryptic Slaughter in the 80s and is in a band. You know, you got to figure that like 86 when we put out our first record was Rain and Blood and Master of Puppets, right? Like groundbreaking, and there's a wealth of records that came out in 1986. But I'm saying the purveyors of the big four, right, put out those records. They weren't massive mainstream stars in 1986, even though they both collectively put out amazing records, right? So the idea that you could be in a band on Metal Blade Records and make that a career wasn't really written in stone yet. Like that wasn't really a reality that you could be in a punk rock heavy metal band and make a career out of it, right? Like those guys at that point of putting 3 records out by 1986 weren't necessarily career bands yet. You know, I mean, they still hadn't even made a music video yet, right? MTV didn't exist. Like it was, or I mean, it did, but like it wasn't mainstream, right? So anyway, sorry, I'm babbling, but the point of it is that we didn't have aspirations that a band could be a career choice, I think is the summary. So at the point that
I can just say that everybody wants to hear you babble, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And because it's to me, it's like, I'm just like it's a history lesson to me. I mean, I know a lot of this stuff already, but a lot of people out there don't. And, you know, I love when younger kids get to find out about this stuff because Cryptic Slaughter was really a progenitor band, you know, like considered crossover, which I doubt you guys called yourselves crossover at the time. I don't really know. What did you guys consider yourselves? A part of the hardcore scene, part of the metal scene? Because you played with all sorts of bands.
We did. And, you know, it's interesting, right? Because it's that thing like in hindsight, and I'm sure everyone is the same, to where you don't know what you're doing whenever you're doing it, right? Like we didn't know what we were doing. Like and granted, we get credited for the invention of the blast beat,
Yes.
right? And there is a bit of an underground debate whether it was us or Napalm Death. I don't really care. The point of it is that like I'm not trying to take claim for something, but the point of it is that we didn't play super fast, and Scott didn't think of these like incredibly fast drum beats for a reason that we were trying to invent something. It was like that was just what we were doing, and we thought like, well, this is maybe our stamp, this is maybe our thing that makes us a little bit different. But like we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. Like that was just what we did inherently, right? Like we were just we took what we could from metal and did it the best that we could. Because I mean, you got to figure we were like one of the youngest bands on the scene, right? And then, you know, with what comes youth also comes inexperience, and we weren't. I don't think we were the most talented guys, but that was the punk rock part of it coming into it, where like we were like, well, you don't have to be Foreigner, Journey, Styx level, produce level in Rush insanity. Like you could just get in the garage and go for it, and that was what we did. So we didn't think that we were part of a scene. I think collectively we were into all of the same things, right? And we were into heavy music, we were into guitar music. All of our origin story, I think, is relatively the same. Whereas it started at Kiss or Led Zeppelin or something, and then somewhere down the line, Sex Pistols and Black Flag creeped their way in, and then you know, like all these things kind of mashed us all up to where we were all collectively into metal and punk rock simultaneously. And so those were the ingredients in our soup, if you will. And
you guys listening to each other? Were you listening to Excel or I, and you know, a lot of these bands that were pretty much considered the you know, the quintessential crossover bands. Were you guys all like listening to each other? Like, because they were contemporaries, right? And
Yeah.
and yeah, like DRI would be like the East Coast version, or I think they're from the East Coast, yeah. And
Texas.
so, like, I mean, one thing I love about Cryptic Slaughter is that, well, first of all, the artwork is incredible. It's so, you know, the iconography is incredible. It's just like, it's so perfect for that time. It really just, like, it's just become that and the DRI, you know, like moshing guy, or like, so this is crossover. This is what crossover was. This is what it looks like. And it's the one thing I love is seeing old flyers of Cryptic Slaughter shows, because it's just like, holy shit, did that show happen? Holy shit, did that show happen? Like, it's so wild. You guys played with such a mix of bands, and it was like, those shows must have been fucking nuts. What do you have any points that you really like remember, that you like, shows that you were just like, holy shit, that was fucking sick? Or were they all just a blur?
Yeah, I mean, they were all kind of sick. I mean, you know, the thing of it is that whenever, like, so our first show that I recall, like, as a 4-piece, that I recall being like a show that wasn't like, you know, some janky throw together kind of thing, was at a place in Long Beach called Fender's Ballroom. And it was Discharge was the headliner. And I don't remember if we opened or not, but like the bands in some sort of level, it was like us and Attitude Adjustment. Yeah, I think we did play first. And it was like Attitude Adjustment and Excel and Final Conflict and Discharge. Like that was the line. Like that was like the first real gig like I ever did that wasn't like a backyard party or some makeshift throw together VFW Masonic Hall thing. And that was in hindsight, right, to think of that. Like, and that wasn't even the cool Discharge era, right? But it sounds cool when you say it out loud.
Yeah, well,
but
say that. I'm thinking about the year. I'm like, yeah, that's like lame Discharge, right? It's
yeah, like, but it was still Discharge, and it was still super packed. But you know, all those bands that, you know, played then, it was just cool. Like, it was just kind of like a bit of a community. Like I don't think like any of those bands had anything in common other than we were just going for it. Like I said, like we didn't categorize it as anything, like, because it was just this point to where things didn't have labels then necessarily, like not that deep cut of labels, to where it's like Attitude Adjustment, Excel, Final Conflict, and Cryptic Slaughter were all very, very drastically different bands sounding, and coming from different places, some more social related, some more political related. But the point of it is that we could all do a show together, and we were all friends, and the music all made sense together, even though it was kind of coming from different places. And so I found that to be interesting. I mean, conceptually, I even found that interesting all the way through the 90s, really, in terms of you could have a bunch of bands that maybe sonically and sort of vision-wise were coming from different places, but yet it all worked together. You know, the fact that you had like Jane's Addiction and Tool and Rage Against the Machine and all these bands coming out of LA, you know, roughly around a similar time. Those bands are all drastically different, yet those bands were on the same shows together and had similar audiences, right?
Well,
so
into the idea of alternative at that time, because everything has to have a label. But I mean, of course, yeah, Jane's Addiction and Rage Against the Machine, and you know, like not LA necessarily, but like Soundgarden and like a lot of the grunge shit. Like, I feel like a lot of those bands were coming from the same place, in the same way that you said that bands in the 80s were. You know, it's like I often think back to Kurt Cobain saying that, I don't even know if it was Kurt Cobain who said it, but maybe someone said it about Nirvana, but Nirvana was Black Sabbath meets the Beatles. And, you know, it's like when I think about like a lot of people I knew and myself, yeah, that's exactly, I mean, I grew up listening to the Beatles, and then the first metal band I got into was Black Sabbath. And it's like that idea of heavy and melodic really developed through that. And, you know, you think about a lot of those bands, I mean, Jane's Addiction was essentially a metal band, if you really put it to, you know, like Dave Navarro is a sick metal guitar player. Fucking unbelievable.
Sure.
And Stephen Perkins is a sick metal drummer. And like fucking, you know, I Soundgarden was a metal band. You know, like it's, you know, I won't say some of the other bands you mentioned, maybe not so much. I mean, Rage was a metal band without distortion. So
yeah.
But you know, it's like so much of that, like it's interesting, and I'm psyched for you that you got to live through that early '90s time. I mean, I did too, but I was on the East Coast, and because we just had the best bands, and it was such a wide array, and they were all really good and really hooky, and getting label support, and you know, it was like, to me, it was like that time in the '90s, which we can segue into your time in the '90s. This was sort of like the classic rock of the '70s. Very similar ethos, you know, like as far as songwriting went. You know, you can even throw Pearl Jam in there. Like, as you know, some people might think that's cheesy, but those guys were truly like beneficiaries of a '70s rock vibe. You know, and so many bands were. So let's go. Cryptic Slaughter's done. Stream of Consciousness comes out after you guys break up. What, your singer goes to up north and puts out his own record?
Les went up north. He continued the band with some other guys. They put out a record called Speak Your Piece. It was actually pretty cool. And then Bill went. He eventually moved out of California, but he went to college to be a teacher, and that was his agenda. And then Scott, I think, was like, I don't remember if he got married or not right away, but like he had other interests. Let's put it that way. And he horsed around a little bit with some stuff, but you know, nothing ever that put a record out. And then I moved to Hollywood to chase the rock and roll dream, you know, and then things kind of, you know, tumbled ups and downs along the way. But, you know, I eventually climbed this heavy metal bass player hired gun trajectory of Prong, Danzig, Zombie, Ozzy.
Like, so in the '90s, though, with Drown and Suffer and Killing Spree and all that stuff, like, you weren't a hired gun. Those were like your bands. And, you know, like, so
yeah,
we're really trying to, I'm not going to say make it, but you were just trying to continue to play because it's probably what you knew how to do. And that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And obviously being in Los Angeles makes it you have a little bit more access to pretty much everything. And everybody around you has got a record deal or is trying to get a record deal or like whatever the fuck. It must have been a really weird and interesting time. Did you ever get, again, because you're a fucking positive, you know, you just got like a fucking positive halo around you. Did you ever get like super down when those bands just didn't happen and you were like, fuck, I got to go play bass for Danzig now? And, you know, like, or was it something that just kind of like happened naturally?
Well, the '90s was a weird time. Not weird. Weird is the wrong word, but it was an interesting time. Like looking back on it in hindsight, especially in LA, and there was a lot of things that went on in the music scene. And so I was in this band Drown, and it was like this thing where like you had a band and you did shows, and there were shows every night of the week in LA. Like the LA scene at that time in the early '90s was awesome. Because there was like, even if you were just a fan, like there was a gig every night, and like every club was packed, and whatever type of music or whatever you were into, like there was a gig to be had and there was a bar to be filled. And it was great. And there was a lot of really cool stuff going on. But the way that it was working is that, you know, major labels there was plenty of them in LA, and they had their eyeballs on everything, and they followed the heat, and they would, you know, take things with heat on it and put it in the studio and try and develop it or just sign it up right away. Like, I think that like Tool, when you think of the Tool, Rage Against the Machine examples, like those are bands that did 8 shows, got a major label record deal, and the rest is history, right? But the rest of us, like we would do shows, and bands with heat on them would get like a development deal, or go in the studio, make demos and shop it around. and then be put in the studio again. And like, there was this like in the 90s, there was development, like major labels took bands and did development. It's something that's sorely missed these days, but like, maybe it just is something that just doesn't matter. But you know, there wasn't the internet then. You know, you couldn't, there was no, you couldn't tell if an unsigned band had 10 million views on their video. Like you just didn't have that. Like you didn't know, like labels were literally signing something and throwing it against the wall. And if it didn't stick, then they dropped it and moved on. But the one that stuck was the one that paid for the 10 that didn't. And that was the business model, and that's how it worked. And then of course they own all the masters along the way. And then, you know, so that's the big business.
Also, but, for a quick sec, that's the problem, is that business model is fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And it came back to bite them all in the ass later on. And
yep.
It's, you know, I mean, I saw it all happening back then. It was like they were giving out major label deals like it was nothing. And in New York, not so much. I mean, we had Quicksand, we had Orange 9mm, we had Helmet, you know, but it was like, and there were a flurry of other bands, Shift, like from our scene, that were getting record deals. And, you know, but then there's like if you ever, every once in a while, BuzzFeed will have like a thing like the 15 bands that put out major label records that you're like, what the fuck? You know, like,
mm-hmm.
Really, should they have really been on a major label? Probably not. I'm psyched they were.
Yeah.
But there's so
yeah.
from back then, it was just like, really, that, oh shit, that's right, that band came out on a major label. And it was all in that sort of feeding frenzy idea. But yeah, I mean, I know, like, you know, when I was signed to Geffen, it was like, you know, what was her name? Ashley Simpson and fucking, you know, 50 Cent and Eminem were paying for all the rock bands that they had to develop, which cost like a zillion times more to not only develop, but record and like do everything. And it is, you know, get out on the road. And it's interesting, like, I saw firsthand that model sort of shift, you know, the day that I sat in a meeting and Jimmy Iovine was like, he's like, yeah, we're shifting to hip hop and pop now. So cutting all the budgets of all the rock bands, except for Papa Roach and Rise Against, who both did really well. So there you go. But, you know, it's like, it was one of those things where you could just see it all happening. And then, of course, you know, that's right around the time when Napster was happening and everything was changing. And it's so interesting to me, like, that was a great time because there was a ton of money in the industry and they were willing to spend it to develop bands. That lasted what do you think? 10 years, maybe? And then it was just like peace.
Yeah, I mean, it was all, I mean, my recollection, it was kind of all through the 90s, you know, and obviously that was happening in the 80s too. You know, but, you know, I mean, the 80s was like, is it going to get on MTV? You know, and if it gets on MTV, then it's typically a win. And if it's not, then, you know, out the door, you know, but yeah, man, so we did that thing. And I mean, talking about, you know, the major labels and the money, it was like, we were one of the fortunate ones that got a deal. And we thought we were super hot shit, you know, and like our deal was like $500,000 and, you know, and like we had a recording budget of $300,000. Like, who fucking needs to make a record for $300,000? But whenever the studio costs $2,500 a day, you know, like that's the way it works. And so we got a record deal. Michael Alago signed us, who is the guy that signed Metallica and White Zombie. And so we were on Elektra Records. And then we ended up getting the management for Pantera and White Zombie. So it was like Walter O'Brien and Andy Gould. And so we thought we were super hot shit. It was like, we're an LA band. We got this huge record deal. We're on Elektra. We're signed by the Metallica dude. We're managed by the Pantera guys. It's just like, we were just like, woo, like just fucking cashing checks. And then we made a $500,000 record and put it out and no one gave a shit. And we were dropped 6 months later. And that was the end of that. At least that was the end of that for me. So whenever management called and like the singer guy calls me and he goes, hey man, like, we just got dropped from the label and then the management dropped us too. And I was like, peace out. Like, I'm out of here. Like, I'm not going to climb that mountain again, you know? Yeah. And then I made this, and then I kind of made this I mean, I did a few things, you know, whatever after that didn't amount to jack shit, and they didn't last long enough for me to even care. But I made this decision of like, oh, well, I'm just gonna play in other people's bands because I love playing music and stuff. But like this whole being in my own band thing, it just isn't working out the way that I want. So it's like, you know, the immediate gratification guy goes like, oh, fuck, if I could just play in bands that are already successful, like that would be way better. And then that's a really, I mean, it's an interesting thing to say, and I'm sure a lot of people have said it, but for some weird reason, it kind of just worked out for me. I can't, and the only way that I can explain it is proximity, is that I was in LA and all the bands that I got in were based in LA at the time. And I was just the dude that was just there and accessible and low maintenance and positive, and I showed up looking the part and knew the shit, and that was it. Like that's my only explanation of how that potentially even happened.
Dude, that's all you can really ask for. I mean, you know, and I can totally see that. You know, having lived out there for a little bit and stuff, you know, just going to a fucking NAAA meeting or standing outside of one is like, you know, everybody's looking for a job.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing. Like what I was going to say when you were talking is like, you know, like you're easy, you know what I mean? Like you're just like you're nice, you're fun to be around. You don't cause any problems. You show up, you know the shit. That's what any good band wants. They don't want drama. And they don't want stupid shit. And you also fucking have a great bass tone and you play amazing. So like, what the fuck? You know, like, I mean, it's really not rocket science in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of people don't realize how many fucked up hangups they have that come off onto other people. And that's why they sort of self-sabotage themselves through a lot of situations. And it's, you know, and I'm gonna, you know, I'm just as bad with, you know, this, but you know, it's even though it's Bud Light, you know, but it's just one of those things, man. Like and it's a great story. And you know, I gotta say, you know, maybe it's a good thing that your band's had like very little success as opposed to like having a little, because if you had a little, you know, you might've been like, shit, I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep going, you know, instead you were just like, I'm going to be practical and fucking do this, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's exactly what you're saying. I don't know that I ever thought of it that way too, is that with the exception of Prong, everything after that was the name of the dude that was in a band that is now solo because he hated being in a band. So he obviously doesn't want to have a solo band that is full of a bunch of dudes that make him feel like being in a band, right? He doesn't want that. He just wants some dudes that are just going to play the shit and shut the fuck up. And, you know, and you see Glenn Danzig, Rob Zombie, and Ozzy Osbourne like that. Like they are solo for a fucking reason, you know?
I wonder about Zakk. Zakk, so did you guys just put out a Zakk Sabbath record?
We did.
And
yeah.
Is it a remake of a Sabbath record completely? Like, give me a little spiel.
Yeah. So Zakk Sabbath has been around for like 5-6 years, and it was just something that would kind of fell together, like for the love of Black Sabbath, but we didn't think that it was going to be a thing other than maybe like a few gigs, but it became a real thing. And hilariously, and maybe there's some lesson in it that we can do a whole other thing about, where like whenever there's something that you don't really put a lot of effort into and you don't really think about, those are the things that are the biggest things in your life, the ones that you think that isn't going to be a thing, right? You know? So it was something that we've been touring. We did like a live EP, and nothing really, but there was the 50-year anniversary of the first Black Sabbath record was coming up, like in a year or two. And so I kind of had the forethought to go like, well, we're a Sabbath cover band. They have their 50-year anniversary coming up. They're currently not a band, so they're not going to do anything. So I took it upon ourselves. I go, we have to celebrate the 50-year anniversary, right? Like we have to be the ones that celebrate it. And so so I had this idea of like, let's record the first record in its entirety, like how they did, where you went in the studio and they just banged it out real quick and it was minimal overdubs to to get the vibe. Like, let's not reinvent it, but we're going to play it the way that we would play it. So we'll doom some stuff out. We'll tune some stuff a little lower, you know, like we'll modernize it a bit, but respectfully, we'll keep the integrity, right, of the purpose of, because our position is that if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation, right? Like, they were the ones that invented our universe, right? So we have to give tribute to them because they're the owners of our lives, basically. So I was like, so we're going to remake the record, we're going to put it out, and then on the actual 50-year anniversary, November 13, 2020, we're going to play a show in Birmingham. And so that was the broad stroke. And then it all kind of came together, and we did a tour of Europe and the UK around. Then we played Birmingham on the 50-year anniversary. We made the record, and the record just came out like a few weeks ago. And once again, to our surprise, it charted pretty high worldwide, and we had zero aspirations of that happening. In fact, we didn't even really want to make it available to the masses, like, because we kind of really just kind of crowdfunded it. We made 500 available, and that was it. We were only going to make 500 available, and so we pre-sold the 500 copies, sold out in like an hour or two, and that was all we were going to make. And then after we made it, we were all like, oh, it's pretty good. Maybe more people should hear it. So we went to the label and we're like, okay, well, let's just make sure those 500 people, they get something very special. So they got this like pretty elaborate box set that had all those extras in it. And then we just made the sort of mass market version of it, the vinyl and the CD available. But to keep the integrity of it, at least in our minds anyway, because we got to have fun with it, right? Because it's a fun project. We never put it on digital media. Like, we never put it on Spotify or Apple or anything, iTunes. So it's only available in a physical product.
Well, I mean, you're skimping out the Black Sabbath guys for making any more money on.
Hey man, they retired. You know, they left. They inadvertently gave us the torch. You know,
I gotta say that, you know, in going into that, you guys played Halloween at Vitus. It's like 2-3 years ago, and I'll admit I was skeptical. I was like, this is weird because you guys are so close to that world. I mean, you're in it, so it's weird to do covers of it, but it came off so well. It was like, yeah, this is really it's truly a tribute to the people who created this entire world that we live in right now. I mean, right. Pandemic world, maybe a little bit, but but you know,
that's the way we look at it. It's like, we know that everyone loves Black Sabbath. No one can see them anymore because they're retired, and we want to celebrate the beauty that they gave us all. And I think that everyone that goes to the show, that's what they're doing. Like, they're not there because they're seeing a bunch of dudes play cover songs. They're there because they're there with us, celebrating these 4 guys that made this amazing music, that gave us the ability to do all this super cool shit. You know, I think that's the attitude.
Fucking good. Joey Castillo, I mean, Zakk's a given. You're a given. Joey Castillo fucking rules. Holy shit.
Totally.
Dude, he fucking rips, man. That guy's like, I'm not going to say he's underrated because he's really not. He's pretty well known as being a drummer, but like, to see him do those Sabbath songs was like, wow. You know, it's like if Ozzy's drummer ever, what's his name? Joey, I can't pronounce
Tommy, yeah.
Yeah, fucking, that guy rips. But like, fucking, I mean, and to bring us to that, so you had gotten Ron and I into a show in Jersey, in Camden, to see Ozzy when you played with him. And I hadn't seen Ozzy, I can't even fucking tell you. I mean, I probably hadn't seen Ozzy since the 80s. Maybe I played a festival with him here and there, but I doubt I actually watched it. And fucking, I was floored, man. Like, he was great. Like, Zakk was great. I mean, obviously, Zakk played, you Zakk, and played that really long solo so Oz could get a fucking rest because he's like 100, and I get it. But, but I mean, the show was just really great. And it was like just a great celebration of his solo shit and just kicked ass. Like that's the thing about Ozzy's catalog is I don't need to hear the Sabbath stuff when I see Ozzy solo. It's like this stuff is incredible. And the band pulled it off so well. It was just a fun night for me and Ron, and thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
It was interesting to see how the whole operation worked too, where it's like, hey, can we come backstage? And it's like the only way you can go backstage is if whoever's name is on the pass has to walk you back. And that's some Sharon Osbourne shit. I mean, fair enough. It's those two have been through quite a bit in their careers, so it's fuck. But yeah, man, fucking, I was like, it was just so wild to like see you up there and just like, wow, what a show. What a fucking.
It was a great tour. It's a shame that it got, kind of derailed, from everything. Because it would have been great to finish it out. I mean, maybe we will. Maybe we'll get an opportunity to finish it out one of these days. But it was great, man. Like you saw one of the best shows. Like that whole tour was so consistently good, and it was great having Zakk back, and the fans loved it, and set list was good, and yeah, man. I mean, I think that Zakk and I were like, oh well. Maybe there's one or two too many Sabbath songs in the set. However, like you're like, but I still get to play Sabbath songs with Ozzy. So
yeah.
like, what am I complaining? No,
I wasn't
never
either. I just was like, it's like his catalog at this point is pretty deep. Even
totally.
That fucking new record is really good.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, man. Like this guy, this guy's got Parkinson's. He's like, it's like, for everything he's been through and all this stuff, like. Shit, great stuff. He still sounds great. I mean, I don't know what they got to do. Hopefully he just sounds like that. I mean, who knows, but like, it's, it's impressive to see, especially for like somebody that age to be able to like do what he does. I can't imagine myself at that age after abusing my body as badly as he has to be able to.
I know.
It's, I feel like he gets on stage and like this whole he turns into a different person. It's like
he does.
He becomes Ozzy and this larger than life figure, and like the adrenaline just goes, and it's interesting. Speaking of which, when was the last time you were on stage?
It would have been the Zakk Sabbath tour in Europe. I think. Trying to think what the last show was. It was Amsterdam.
Okay.
And then the show before that I think was Paris. This was all in February. But the point that I bring out is that the Paris show, Bruce Dickinson was side stage the entire show. And I keep in mind our set is 2 fucking hours, right? And I kept looking over at him thinking like, there's no way he is going to endure 2 hours of shred, right? And like, and doom. Like, there's just no way. And dude, I high-fived him on the way off stage, like after a 2-hour set. Like, it's just fucking crazy. But like, I mentioned that because I'm still a 15-year-old kid that doesn't believe any of the shit is happening to him. Like that he hangs out in dressing rooms with Ozzy Osbourne and Rob Halford, and that he's playing Sabbath songs to a sold-out crowd in Paris with Bruce Dickinson on the side of the stage, like cheering him on. Like, this is all shit that isn't happening.
Because it's imagine like, it's surreal, and it's like, but like, I'm sure you're in the moment, and then that moment is like, it goes away. It's like it becomes a memory, and so it's like it's a good way of thinking of like just continuously being like, wow, like what's next? What else can fucking happen? It's like, and it's endless. It's
right.
Brought up your last show is because I've had like these weird moments where I'm like, am I ever going to be on stage again? Like, am I ever going to play? Like the last time I was on stage was at Terminal 5 in New York City, and it was a good way to go out. But like, I often think like, am I ever going to play again? Because it just, like you go through these ups and downs of, yeah, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. And then like, am I still going to be in a band in 2 years? Like I haven't even been in my rehearsal space in 9 months because it's just like, why? It's such a weird fucking fucked up feeling. But we got to wrap it up because it's going to cut us off.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for giving me a little positivity, a little PMA, because you are the fucking man. Say hi to your wife for me, please. Lovely.
Will do.
And I hope you guys are doing okay, and keep chugging along, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And hey, man, I hope to play St. Vitus again one day soon, or at least pull up to the bar and get a Bud Light with you.
Fuck yeah, dude. Come on. Stop. Just fly out. Come on. Fuck it.
Totally.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Have a good one.